Right, good morning, everyone. Good morning to most of you already. Yeah, it's a great group here. So where do I start? I have a list of things and actually trying to read here. So I'm looking down. I suppose let's go through the usual Zoom rules in the first place. It'd be nice if you can have your camera on, but we understand if you don't, particularly with people with kids in the background and stuff like that. We're recording this morning. Not only we're recording, but we're also just practicing our technical skills. So Sinead is streaming the get together here to Facebook Live. If you speak with your camera on, then you'll be on the video, actually, which is to say we're also recording. If you don't speak, well, then you won't be on the video because we are recording in speaker view and we're streaming in speaker view. So only people that speak will actually turn up on the video. So if you don't want to be on the video, happily speak to us with your camera off or don't speak. But so that is, so we hope you're all okay with that. If you can have your microphone off when you're not talking, please. And that's the new language we picked up from one of our conductors here. It's much nicer to say have your microphone off as opposed to just being muted all the time. If you want, you can, most people use to Zoom at this stage, but if you want, if you click on speaker view in your window, if you want just to see the one person speaking, or you can click on gallery view, then see all the little boxes. Be nice if you could name yourself, but also who you're with. So just your orchestra or ensemble, so that we can all see and know who each other is. And so we're planned here. We're kind of booked in from 10 until 12. We might be finished earlier, or we might have lots and lots to chat about still at midday, in which case we can hang on as long as people want to chat. Okay, so that's the Zoom housekeeping. So I'm Alan Gray. I'm the director of the Association of Youth Orchestras. And we also have, you can see here with Claire Daly, our chairperson is here, and Sinead and Bertie from the office. And so it's really nice to see you all here. Sorry for those of you who turned up at 9:30. I just kind of tried to block out the time on our Zoom account. So we had an official start of 10, but the link said 9:30. So here we are again in level 5 3/4, as I like to call this one, because any of the levels they give us, they're never quite actually what they give us. So, and who knows quite how long we're here. I was hoping that we'd be relatively back to normal by September. I'm still hoping that, but I'm not really sure that it's going to be the case, or we might be back to limited normality. But in some respects, we're going to have to be trying to engage people in online or blended methods for some while yet. So I have to acknowledge at this stage, of course, that it can be difficult for some orchestras to do anything at all, simply because the young people involved may not have access to decent broadband, or they may not have devices. So I suppose it's just good to acknowledge that we're already living in a system where there's kind of inequality in access to music education and to instrumental training, and this is being exacerbated by the pandemic and trying to do things online. So I think we just should acknowledge that. On the plus side, broadband rollout is being vastly increased around the country, and there's broadband hubs being put together and stuff like that. So the potentials for all this in the long term is very good. And we hopefully will have lots more get-togethers like this, and that will really help us sort of network and work together. And so we're going to have this morning a number of semi-formal presentations. So from Paula Klein, who's the manager of the Ulster Youth Orchestra, from Joanna Crooks, who runs with Sister Bernadette Sweeney, who runs the St Agnes's Community Centre for Music and the Arts in Crumlin, and also was the founder of the St Agnes's, now the school Una Nefa String Orchestra, Nicole Hudson, who works with the St Agnes's Orchestras, Sinéad Hayes, who has been working with the Sinfonietta in Athenry Music School, and Sophie Butler, who has been is the manager of ConCorda. So all these people actually do all sorts of other things as well, but they're here in those particular respects this morning. Would like, as always, to thank the Arts Council for their support in keeping us going, particularly this year. They have been very, very good. So purpose of this morning, some short presentations, some chats, and we are recording. Part of the reason we're recording is just to actually be able to grab what happens here and put it into text format and to circulate it to everyone. So whatever ideas we have that can help us keep young people and even not so young people engaged, we're just trying to put that back out in the world again. So with that, does anyone have any immediate questions? Have I left anything out? If so, feel free just to speak up. Okay, great, thank you. So in the first instance, so Paula, can I ask you to present and show your short video as well, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was really pleased to be asked to do this. Before I say anything or show anything, I hope I don't come across as trying to teach any grannies to suck eggs, and I'm certainly not reinventing the wheel in anything we've done. But yeah, I'm really pleased to show what we have done. So before I talk about it, I just want to show you our little clip, a little piece that we had on the BBC. So if I can share screen this, I'll do this. Oh, hold on. Sorry, I knew this would. Here we are.
We're not seeing that, I don't think.
No, sorry, Paula, we're not seeing that.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Do you know, I practiced this so many times. Let me go back and do this again.
Good. So the green share screen button, and then when you get the pop-up, you'll need to select the share my computer audio.
Yes, that's what I didn't do. Sorry, I'm actually quite nervous doing this. This is the first time I've done anything like this before. So right, let's hopefully this will work now.
And then if you select your window with the YouTube as well.
Can you see that now?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Right, I'll go back to the beginning.
From the difficulties, beautiful things are created. I think about composers 90% of the time. When composers were in very difficult times in their lives, they created wonderful things. From the ashes, in a way, the phoenix comes out, and it's just beautiful to see. It's a tough piece to play. A lot of tricky moments and technical passages. I was impressed by the final result, I have to say. It is a matter of making a point. We are still here, we exist. It's a one-time experience, I hope, for everyone.
Okay, I hope. Oh, thank you. I'm so glad that's actually worked. So I'm now going to try and show a short PowerPoint presentation. So let's hope this works. Okay, so adapting to the new normal, which is that phrase that everyone hates. So just a brief overview of who we are. So we are the Northern Ireland equivalent of a national youth orchestra, depending on how you view Northern Ireland. We don't really know how to view ourselves most of the time. We're in our 28th year. We take students from age 14 to 23 who are grade 7, grade 8, that's ABRSM minimum standard. We run a yearly schedule of we have our main residential course just once in the summer. We run workshops and we do education and outreach events. We have usually between 80 and 90 people. That's us on the Ulster Hall stage with Rumon Gamba in 2019. We have 2 part-time staff. One is me and one is Laura, our administrator. So between us, we do 40 hours a week. And our principal funder is the Arts Council of Northern Ireland. We are funded by various other trusts and foundations and membership fees and everything else. We're a registered charity. Our usual summer course that we do is 10 days long. It's a residential that we have at Greenmount College in Antrim. We have sectionals with a team of usually 13 professional musicians who come in and tutor. We have a rehearsal conductor and a main conductor. Our rehearsal conductor does the first 5 days. Then we move to the guy that comes in and takes all the glory, or girl. We've recently started doing a selection of talks, usually about careers advice or, working as a freelance musician or what's life at college like, that kind of thing. We have an informal concert where people just come and show whatever other skills they have, or they put on a piece of their own. We run a very successful entertainment schedule. It's usually the thing that people come back and say they really enjoyed, quizzes and all sorts of different silly games. And then we do 2 public concerts at the end of the course, one in the Guildhall in Derry and the other one in the Ulster Hall in Belfast. So those pictures are taken from our Greenmount rehearsals in 2019. So the virtual alternative, it was last March, I think, when we realized that our normal residential course wasn't going to happen, but we thought we'd looked at some of the other models like the Benedetti Foundation, Benedetti Sessions, that they did almost a month-long course, I think. And we looked at National Youth Orchestra Great Britain because they were doing their Easter course. And those 2 people were really helpful. And I think that's what I've sort of learned from this, is that everybody is really helpful. And, anything that I have that I can share, I will. And people have been so generous with the resources that they've given to us. So we kind of looked at what they'd done and then adapted the sort of general ideas to try and replicate our normal residential course online. We did everything via Zoom. We still managed to hold sectionals. Obviously, they couldn't play together, but the sectionals seemed to work quite well. We still had a rehearsal conductor who took sort of hour-long sessions where he talked about the style of the piece and whatever. And then Daniele, who you saw, also did a few lectures and a few few sessions with the orchestra. We had a selection of talks. We did master classes. We had individual lessons and group lessons. We did our usual entertainment with quiz and bingo, which was very successful, and a pizza night. And then the sort of outcome of it all was one big recording that you saw, the Tchaikovsky, and then we also did about 12 or 13 small recordings that the sections did themselves. We had a harp and piano duet, and then the cellos did a couple of pieces themselves. And we've put all of those are available on our YouTube and Facebook channels. So what did we learn? That, by the way, with the potatoes is one of our quiz or one of our entertainment nights where Sats, our percussionist, with his cymbals made from oat cakes. So good broadband connection is essential. well, obviously we haven't been in our own offices for a long time because they're so small, you couldn't fit 2 people socially distanced. We moved into, we couldn't do it from home either because I have someone else, I have my son who's homeschooling, although he wasn't at the time, but he's always on Farming Simulator or some other game that's draining our broadband. So we actually approached Glandor, who I believe have offices in Dublin and Cork as well. And we did a sort of a contra agreement with them where we moved into some temporary office space to hold the course, which was really, really good because they have they had a fabulous business, quality broadband connection. So that was one thing that we did, and they were very agreeable to letting us do that. In return, we're going to provide string groups and brass groups to any of their functions whenever they get back going again. Extra support staff. Normally we would have sectional tutors. This time we took on assistant tutors as well, who looked after the Zoom element. They looked after breakout rooms, answering chat, recording sessions, that kind of thing. And that was really useful because it let the artistic staff just do their job. Percussion is difficult. I don't suppose I'm telling anybody things that they don't already know. Because the restrictions were slightly lifted during the course, we were able to have the percussion socially distanced in a church hall. We had then the tutor just on a television screen and at the other side of the room. So that worked okay, but sound quality is hugely problematic, especially with timps. We're doing a course in February, and we're actually just going to put the timps on the recording as a MIDI instrument because it's impossible to get any decent sound. I think snare drums and whatever else is problematic as well. Dropbox was great for all of our, I have a dedicated Zoom expert. Laura, who's our administrator, she spent an awful lot of time researching the capabilities of Zoom. We used Zoom Pro. We had upgraded to Zoom Business, but we actually didn't need that. So we've saved ourselves a lot of money just using Zoom Pro. We were able to have well over 100 people using that and co-hosts recording and all of that. So it's actually, I think it's £14 a month or something. So it was very reasonable. My favorite feature is the Just Touch Up My Appearance, which helped whenever you're really tired. We have plenty of resources, Zoom protocols, Zoom guides, Zoom etiquettes. If anybody wants to have a look at any of those, I'm happy to send them on. It was all about, how to set up your mic and where to put things and what settings to adjust and all the normal etiquette things about, not having too much clutter in the background and that sort of thing. Dropbox Business we used that because we have 3 licenses that we handed out to our production team. So Dropbox was great just for storing all of the parts and it just made things really easy. Artistic staff, we had a pre-course meeting. We ran through how to use the Zoom Dropbox. We talked to them about, how to do their tutorials and all the resources available. That was useful because I think a lot of our artistic staff hadn't done anything like this before. Clear recording instructions again to players. We sent out a lot of resources and talked about it on the course. And even though we did quite a lot of that, they still came back where people hadn't clapped or they had their video screens the wrong way around or that sort of thing. This time when we have our next thing at half term, we're having a full hour session just with the producer so that he can go through everything step by step. We had Tom Wall from TW Post and he was just incredible. You've seen the end result, but he took so much time. I mean, it's not cheap if you want to get something of, the quality that we got was well worth the money, but it is quite a considerable outlay. It's important to have fun. I think I said before, we have 4 nights of entertainment, quiz, bingo, scavenger hunt, pizza night, and the feedback was great for the entertainment. And I think you can see our pizza party there. That's one of our welfare staff. I think that's what they needed. They needed just to get together and relax at the end of the day. And it was a real family feel. I think a lot of people said that they felt like they were in the room. And then I'm just going to finish with some of our feedback. So UIO 2020 was truly a unique experience and has made me even more excited to apply for next year's course. It has been a joy to be part of a very talented group of students and teachers and staff. The Ulster Youth Orchestra has turned my quarantine from foe to friend. That quote I've put in a lot of funding applications. I loved the entertainment sessions that I went to. There was a lot of banter between all the members of the team, which made everyone feel right at home and gave a good idea of the family feel we always get when we were at Greenmount. The activities were all lots of fun, and I really appreciate all the work that went into preparing them for us. iayo was always one of the highlights of my summer and probably my year as well. The online course ran so smoothly, it felt like we had just picked up where we left off at Greenmount last year. Great crack as always, sad that it's over for another year. So that's kind of an, thank you. That's kind of an overview. Thank you very much. Yeah, just to say that we are at the point, I'm sure we'll come to this, but we're at the point now where we're deciding what we do for this summer. I think I had been overly optimistic way back last September when we'd asked people to reapply for 2021. Now I'm at the point where I'm thinking we'll be lucky if we're blended, but I think hopefully by August, we probably will be looking at a more blended approach. I certainly don't think we're going to be a residential course, unfortunately. So that's where we're at. So yeah, I'm happy to answer anything.
Great. I think we'll move on, and then we'll have a general sort of chat and questions and answers later on. And anyone can feel free to put questions into the chat box as well, or just even if you put a star in the chat box, then that will call you out later that you want to talk. Yeah, I think there's aspects of what organizations have been doing that give a sense of being in real life. So it's not all just like we're in Zoom and we're disconnected. There is some sense of connection, and some very good senses of connection have happened as well. So thank you very much, Paula. And it was great, and you did like a 10-day course. That was like,
yeah. I think if I did another one the exact same, I might do slightly less.
Very good. So great. So we'll move along now to Joanna Crooks, also our president, of course. But Joanna, so I think you're probably going to talk between the adults and the young people, or possibly.
Yes, about both, and share with Nicole, who's here as well.
Excellent.
She is one of our absolutely wonderful teachers. So yeah. In Crumlin, we are dealing with 3 orchestras: the primary school orchestra, the secondary school orchestra, and the adult orchestra. And there are 11 hours of rehearsals going on weekly. We do host the sessions with a volunteer so that the professional teachers don't have to be bothered with people who've fallen out of the room or come in late or all those kinds of things. And one of the things that we have really felt as the year has worn on, that what people have needed above all is certainty and things to look forward to. So we've already announced the dates for our summer camp, which will involve the secondary chamber orchestra and the adult orchestra, under the baton of Cormac, who's here, and I hope he'll say something about how we're planning that. We do hope to have a live streamed hybrid situation, but essentially it will be virtual. We're lucky that in spite of the rapid evacuation of the school building when the shutdown happened, we did have the space in the Community Centre for Music of the Arts to dump everything, but largely most of our music and library is unavailable at the moment. I hardly know where it is right now, because the evacuation happened so fast just before schools reopened. But we've kind of managed, and that space has been open for doing recordings when national safety guidelines permitted that. I think that Paula used a really important word, which is connection. And I think that's the thing that we most wanted to maintain last spring when all of this happened suddenly, was to maintain a sense of connection between the players, both by having rehearsal on an ongoing basis and by having goals. And I've been looking in the last couple of days thinking about what was important in maintaining that sense of connection. For us, particularly with the adult orchestra, the related WhatsApp chat group, which is formed for each section of the orchestra, is an important resource to back up their sense of connection in coming into rehearsals weekly. It's used quite extensively by the different sections and is also used for bolstering information. We find we need to, I'm sure other orchestra managers find this, we need to send the same information over and over and over and in different formats. I've come to the conclusion myself that oftentimes simple is best, and we have generally sent music directly to players because we find that people are frightened off as soon as they're asked to do anything even mildly technically different from what they are finding easy. They back off and don't download. So by and large, we send things as directly as we can to the individual player. And I still find it extremely useful to be able in the middle of a rehearsal to send someone a piece of music. We find that the players are divided between those who are printing off and using hard copies of music and writing on them during rehearsal, and the people who are reading off a second device. The tutors for the chamber orchestra certainly have a very strong preference for the students having printed off music, and we set up a system whereby if they didn't have a facility to print, they could arrange to collect music from someone in Crumlin, and that of course is dependent on them being within a 5-kilometre distance to do that, and the system is now closed down because that person got COVID-19 and is currently sick. So for a period of time that system won't be available to anyone. I hope that Nicole will talk quite a lot about the way in which we can engage people and enhance their experience, and sound quality, and encouraging people to slowly, bit by bit, upgrade, use headphones, use the best format of Zoom that was possible, I think, and use tracks to practice with at home. All of those things have helped enormously. And I was watching her viola lesson last night, where I think all but one of the players in the section are now using headphones. But she'll talk about that herself, I'm sure. I think that when I'm thinking about what we can do that will make the long, difficult time that's ahead of us still, I think repertoire helps enormously, so that when we're looking at what we're going to spend money on, buying new music that's going to be really exciting to play is important. And with our chamber orchestra, Killian is doing some pieces which he would, I think, describe as pieces that are there for a lifetime. They're doing the Bach double violin concerto at the moment, which is going to be something that will be with them forever. We have gone the route of doing Zoom concerts, and I think those have been exciting for everyone, and it's had a benefit which we hadn't really thought about so much beforehand, that many people have got relations nowadays who are far flung. Into the Zoom concerts have come relations and friends who are living not only in different parts of Ireland, who've never been at a concert where their friend, relative or neighbour was performing in Crumlin, but from India, Dubai, Singapore, you name it, people have come in, from Mexico, all sorts of things. So this is one of the fantastic positives, I think, of the Zoom concert, that it gives people this opportunity to have relatives engaged in what their children or parents or grandparents are doing from any part of the world. And that's a really big positive. People have needed a huge amount of support to stay engaged, and we've used a system of creating mentors for very new people. We have beginners who have never played in the real world. They've only been in the virtual world. And their mentors mean a lot to them, because in the ordinary situation, they'd have been having tea and chats with people at tea breaks. And so the mentor is great because they, if possible, arrange to practice once a week with somebody. And when we do get back in the real world, that's going to be a very friendly face to meet up with. We're also encouraging the beginners to transition by attending both the beginner intermediate session and the full section. So they begin to be familiar with the faces, even if they're not playing all the notes in their bigger section. So we're looking to create a strong sense of identity with the section. And Killian is also doing that within the chamber orchestra by having sections as well as tutti sessions with them. It's quite a small group, so they're getting to know the people in their sections very well. We have a lot of mentoring has gone on to enable people to use Zoom. A lot of problems with families who don't have equipment. We've managed to get in for both children and adults some laptops which have been cleaned off and handed out. But the technical difficulties are there, and people, I think as the year has gone on, parents have got more and more weary. I noticed a change in this last lockdown where the parents are more exhausted by homeschooling on top of everything else. And you can actually witness online the increased difficulty between parents and children setting up Zoom sessions. All one can do is hope that once they're set up, that the Zoom rehearsal gives the parent at home just a small break, maybe for a cup of tea or something. But I do think that that's something to be talked about at home, perhaps, that for parents to find a way to disengage from the rehearsal, even if they're present in the background, to let the child do. Some of the children are quite brilliant at using chat, and some of them are very funny in what they do. Nicole, I'm sure, will tell us more about that. We've got one very funny little boy who, when Nicole asks him to do something that he doesn't want to do, he instantly turns his video off. There's not much that you can do about that. We announced our camp dates. I've said that already because we think people need things to look forward to. And at the present, we have a date for the next Zoom concert, which is March the 20th. And I think one of the advantages of Zoom is that where orchestras are quite small, in our adult orchestra have connections with Brussels, for instance, and New York, where they found it very difficult to get anything off ground at all during the pandemic. And so players from those orchestras are engaging in Dublin. And I think that's something which could be widely used around the youth orchestra, where smaller orchestras really have no either financial basis or organisational basis to get things off ground. Joining in with another orchestra seems to me to be a great idea, and it's also an obvious beginning of a closer exchange when those kinds of things become possible in the future. So it's another positive that I see. We are greatly indebted to our tutors. They've adapted brilliantly to using Zoom, and we haven't actually found anything better than Zoom for doing that. We have tried some social events with our orchestra. It used to be that we took them to the Zipwire place, which was a great way to start a year. And obviously Zoom is as far removed from going out on an expedition to the to Braddon Zipwire as you can get. But I think anything social that keeps the students together is possible. Nicole did a series of 30 videos for the school for junior infants, senior infants and first class to replace the pre-instrumental education that was going on there. And they're repeating that series of videos between Christmas and Easter, and the feedback from the school was very good. But we look at a very uncertain future because we cannot see schools welcoming any community groups back, either in the evenings or in daytime, into schools, as long as the questions about transmission and variants and all of these things continue to rage around. So I think the future for the orchestral program in St Agnes CCMA is going to be significantly different from what it has been over the past 11 years. I think I've said an awful lot of things there about, we haven't really gone down the road of the virtual recordings. partly because they were incredibly expensive, but partly because our first experience of doing a Zoom concert live in October was so very positive. And Seamus Doyle himself had a lot to say about that the orchestra themselves, using Speaker View, had a very strong sense of following the conductor. They've had that feeling of re-engagement in a tutti session. Nicole has been watching that. We've reintroduced the idea of having tutti rehearsals as regularly as well as the section rehearsals, and obviously everyone's been told how to use the Speaker View to follow the conductor who's immediately in front of them. The conductor has to have good enough equipment at home to share the sound as well, and we've been investing in the recordings which have been made by our tutors. That involves 5 professionals for a 3-hour session in the CCMA building, socially distanced. That is a quintet, a professional quintet with a conductor and a sound engineer for a 3-hour session to produce the tracks which we then use for the Zoom concert. And right now, of course, with the current limitations, we can't have a recording session. So we're looking anxiously to see when there will be some small lift in the restrictions to make it easier to do that again. In the short term, we can use some demo tracks, but they're usually curtailed and may be useful for rehearsal for a brief time, but not very satisfactory. And I'm very anxious to answer questions and let Nicole answer questions at this point.
Very good. Thank you so much, Joanna. Yeah, I'm kind of writing down. I mean, there's some great stuff here. Actually, I think probably also we might make a podcast out of this, because I know I want to listen back. I don't necessarily need to watch it on screen. But so thank you so much, and there's great stuff there. Nicole, there was one specific reason I asked for you to come along, but actually you might have much more important things to say, because actually it sounds like stuff has moved on a lot since I attended your sectional rehearsal back in April, May, something like that. What I particularly was struck by at that stage was that the participants with their microphones off, but they were actually, you were working with them on their orchestral practice in a way, of course, that they never ever get to do, which is they get to work on their orchestral practice as if they're in orchestra, but they can only hear themselves, which is something that's actually really good, and something that we might actually take away from this is that a new way of actually people practicing being good at orchestra by not being an orchestra. That was what I was particularly interested in, but if you go with what you're also most interested in.
Yeah, I think I mean the whole adjustment for me personally, teaching, I feel like, you know, I have to preempt now the difficult passages. I have to be able to see them before I'm actually not even going to hear them, and that's kind of the skill set that I've been busy trying to develop. So while everybody is muted, I'm looking for the issues already, which is a very different way of teaching, because usually obviously your student comes into you and you'll get stuck into something and we'll tumble into a corner somewhere, and that is very obvious then where we need to work. So otherwise I'm relying on people to unmute themselves and tell me, and not everybody wants to do that, you know. The other thing I like to use is a speaker. I use a Bluetooth speaker quite a lot, and I use metronome during my lessons. It's a super tool. I always you know, like to push and push and push the working with a metronome, which should be an extension of your toolkit, I think, with your instrument. And it's fun, you know, in a group we can all do it. So I'm playing with the metronome here, and we can all work, and we start with our slow speeds, and it's a great way to be teaching the kids how to practice properly. It's not something I would ever have the time to do usually in my lessons face to face. So there are great pluses here that we can focus on. I'm glad Joanna actually brought up the parents. I was thinking about, you know, this is all about connection. you know, and strengthening that connection and engagement. And the other day, you know, my friend had given me a little screenshot of her day with her 2 kids, and between dance, piano, singing lessons for the 2 kids, Zoom, and you know, the two girls eating, homeschooling. I really couldn't believe it, and it just made me want to make sure that I tried to connect just that little bit more with the parents, congratulate them, tell them they're doing so good. Just a quick short text, not necessarily the generic email that blasts out to everybody, just a quick WhatsApp. You know, I just think keeping that strong connection with the parents, that they're doing a great job for their child to keep arriving, set up on time and feeling good. Another aspect to my Zoom lesson that I really like to enforce is your actual setup. So you're great using a window, having good lighting. You know, sometimes in our adults orchestra, I still do get some people arriving to play for the lesson like this into the camera, you know, a shoulder. And really it is disconnecting to look at that. Nobody, you know, can relate to that in any way. It's really nice to see a whole frame and a whole body playing for your whole session as well. The earphones, as Joanna had said, are so helpful, especially when using tracks. So what I found when I haven't remembered my earphones on the day that we were using the tracks, I wasn't able to play as well or as tightly with the track. I didn't get the same results, the same satisfaction as when I use the earphones. It's really important that when we use the track, that the track is quite domineering, I guess. You know, my instrument cannot be louder than the track, or else I don't have connection, engagement with the music. Okay, so I felt that was really helpful. Also then, because you know, the classes are muted, how unusual for music. I'm teaching music to silence, which is absolutely bizarre. But what I can do, I find, is do an awful lot of emphasis on bow work. My eyes can see so much. I'm actually nearly visually more engaged, not hearing, with how the bow is doing. So there's a huge amount of development I find that I can actually do with bows. And we can also still all learn from each other across the Zoom lesson, looking at each other's bows, you know. I loved Paula's presentation. I thought that was super, and I was particularly interested in your entertainment values. And you did also say how you know, it's important to have fun, and I think more than ever right now, it's so important to be having fun and together to create that relationship, to keep that going together. I love the idea of doing your pizza night, and as Joanna mentioned, the little bit of chat that happens is great, I think, as well, just to keep that engagement going. We did do before a Halloween party where we all dressed up, which was a lovely event to do. It was great fun. And we had some spooky readings, you know, some stories and stuff. It was really a lovely way to connect. We had a great turnout. So that is definitely something else that can be useful to do. So I hope that's helpful. And again, if anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's great. I mean, we've people generally have found so many ways of connecting with people in this. It's really great. As I say, we'll push questions to the end. I'm kind of conscious, actually, there's so many people here that actually I'd love to talk. We're not going to have enough time before we're finished, because it's a fantastic group. So I'm now going to move on to Sinéad Hayes. Sinéad, are you still here?
Yeah. Hi, Alan.
Okay, so Sinéad is involved with many different things, but actually she is here today as the conductor of the Athenry Sinfonietta to speak particularly about her work with them. Great, thank you, Sinéad.
Okay, thanks, Alan, and thanks to everybody. It's been fantastic so far. I just feel like I'm learning so much. So I'm mostly a conductor, and just a tiny bit about me. I train mostly in the UK, but I do have a background as a peripatetic upper strings teacher, and I delivered whole class wider opportunities, cello and violin, for Trafford Music Service when I was in the UK, and also worked a lot with youth orchestras there. So it's been really interesting to try and draw on that experience and kind of reframe the whole thing really for conducting. I use the word loosely in the COVID age. So I'm just going to share my screen very, very briefly before I start talking too much. Hang on a second. This is always the bit that just potentially. Here we go. So can you all see that? That should say next projects, which is in fact my last slide. Hang on. It's going well so far. Okay, so Zoom conducting, working with Athenry Sinfonietta. So just before I start, I found myself during the first lockdown completely isolated because all my work is not here in Galway. It's anywhere else apart from here. So I was very delighted when Catherine McMonish picked up the phone and said she would like a brainstorming session on how we're going to work with the Sinfonietta, which is her orchestra in Athenry. And so we did, and this is what we did in December.
Now, I'm afraid we've no sound there.
Sorry. 1 minute. The best laid plans. Okay. Well, you can see my really quite enthusiastic conducting there. So that's something anyway. 1 second. I'm just going to pause the share. Okay. Maybe we're going to have to just imagine that. Anyway, it was great. 1 second, I'll just see if I can do this again. Oh, share sound. Okay, here we go. One more time. Okay. How about now? Sound?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so that just gives you a flavour of what we did. We got them together in 2 groups of 9. But before I go into that, Athenry Sinfonietta is 18 players. We have ages 14 to 18, grades 5 to 8. Instruments, great upper strings, violins, violas, no cellos unfortunately, 1 double bass, 2 flutes and an alto saxophone who I make up the parts for with an amalgamation of the viola and the cello parts. So what happens? The repertoire for last term was Raymond Dean, believe it or not. That was a new piece a piece he wrote in 2009 called A Baroque Session with Carolyn and Friends. And as you can hear, it's a Carolyn piece with a trad piece and then a classical piece. So it's in 4 movements and scored for a string orchestra with a trio of soloists. And I'm sure Raymond wouldn't mind me saying it's not typical Raymond Dean, but it's a great piece, and it really worked well for the Zoom situation because it's very sectional, and it's in kind of 16-bar chunks, and then the soloists take over, and then the tutti strings take over again. So we paired it then with just the pastoral from the Christmas concerto as well. So we meet on a Thursday night for an hour, and we all kind of pile into the big Zoom room, and it kind of feels like the Malay before a big rehearsal as ever, and we have a brief chat, and then we go into our breakout rooms, so the Sinfonietta breakout room, and we kind of get started. So just on the pre-preparation, kind of typical, pre-preparation for anything, bowed parts, marked up parts, email them to all the players, and they have to have them printed out and on their stands for the rehearsal. And what I did was I recorded all the parts using my violin and a baritone violin, which is just a normal violin strung an octave lower, and just layered them all up one on top of the other. And what I did was I prepared parts then for each section, so that in your right ear was your part, so second violin. So I panned, say, the second violin part to the right, brought the volume up, and then panned the rest of the ensemble to the left, so that you got the sense of where you were in the music, and you could practice your own part just with that in your ear. And obviously you could take the left headphone off and listen to yourself as well. So that was a lot of work, actually, and I used Ableton Live for that, which was really, really useful, and just my very simple microphone setup here, which was great. But as I say, it was a fair bit of work to get to it, but it was really, really useful for them to be able to just take those tracks and just practice themselves away from the session. So the sessions are, you just have about 50 minutes. We have an initial chat. I unmute everybody, have a wee chat just to see what they did during the week. Was, silly things like what was their favourite dinner they had during the week, something to just get everyone just engaged and just talking initially. Then we tune, everyone mutes themselves and they tune to me, and I'm tuned to 440. And then I'll do a warm-up, which is something I can visually check. So it'll be their sounding point, bow distribution, bow speed, just even bow strokes. I'll pick a couple of bars of the repertoire, and we just do something that can visually check that everyone's kind of focusing on a specific aspect of it. And then we'll do some work on the repertoire. And initially these are led by me, so I play the violin. So I'll take an 8-bar section and go through each section, play the first violin, second violin, viola as much as I can, and then they're playing against me all the time, and I'm just visually checking a little bit what you were saying, like Nicole. It's a different set of skills entirely to what you usually have, and you can't kind of rely on ears or anything. So you're kind of visually checking all the time. But of course there's a lag with Zoom, which makes it very, very tricky. So you're playing and they're not playing with you, they're playing behind you, so you're kind of always constantly adjusting. So after a few weeks I stop leading and I get the individual players to lead. So they'll lead a short section, so it's really useful, especially if you play viola or second violin, just to feel that yes, you are kind of important in the group. And then we'll usually just recap towards the end what we covered. I'll ask questions like, what did we cover? Total silence, tumbleweed, But then with a bit of prompting, it does come back, and then we'll plan what we're going to do next week. So in terms of musical goals, I mean, it's trying to reframe what we're doing for a Zoom age, so that they're continuing to build on those orchestra skills. So again, build a sense of individual and collective music responsibility. And I kind of focus on trying to think about three things. So critical listening, critical musical thinking, and critical musical observation. These are things that we can train, over Zoom, which to a point, like everything else. It's giving them the skills really to be able to teach themselves and to listen to themselves and to think, how can I make it better? So that's really what I'm after. So during the sessions, I'll just ask questions all the time, and just so I'll play, and then we'll talk about the pulse, and just ask them to constantly just compare. Am I playing exactly with you? What's the character I want? What's the sound quality? And it's very, very tricky over Zoom, of course, to hear any kind of sound quality. But I have a good microphone, so I'm hoping they're hearing differences in the sound quality. And how can they get that? What do they need to do physically to actually get that sound quality? Then critical musical thinking, always asking why, and just never accept that what I say is what it needs to be. Just why? Why am I making those decisions? What am I doing? And it's great as well. Just give them. You focus on the details, but also the big picture. Just know where they are within the movement. Where am I now? What's going on? What's next? Just all those decisions, and just kind of really starting to engage with the process. And like thinking about like phrase lengths. Is it a 2-bar phrase? Is it a 4-bar phrase? What's the overall architecture of that? And just kind of provoking them into just asking the questions of themselves, and always with that thing of, it's flexible. It can change. Nothing is set in stone, and there's many ways to skin the musical cat. So it's always kind of reinforcing that. And then I think the one thing Zoom is good for is the visual awareness. So you can be aware of your colleagues, aware of the leader, aware of the conductor. Things like sounding point, bow speed. You're checking that all the time, and hopefully that will then translate when we do all get back into a room into actual skills of kind of being aware of each other still, because I think that's probably the thing we're going to struggle with when we do all get back to playing together. So yeah, I want them all to be questioning musicians and just always thinking, how does it sound? How can I imagine it sounding? What do I need to do? What physically do I need to do to make it better? And what are the possibilities? But then, I mean, this all sounds very cerebral, and I have a background as an engineer. It sounds a bit like how an engineer would approach, taking apart a piece of music. But I always try to leave a bit of space for the magic, because that's it. Music is something that's kind of indefinable, unquantifiable, and they just need to know that there is a magical element to it, and that they need to leave a bit of space for that. But of course, that they all think I'm a hippie, so that's kind of fine. Just next projects that we're working on. I'm developing a conducting course for secondary school students, which I'm going to try out on the gang in Athenry, and we're developing some contemporary music resources as well, which I'm going to use them as guinea pigs for. And there is collaboration as well with Cool Music and Arts around Carolyn and local history, and using that as a catalyst for creativity in general. So just thanks to the team at AMS, it's been amazing. It's been an amazing thing to engage week on week with the students, and to just to see how they're developing, and just to feel that you're actually part of it. Because I suppose as a conductor, you can tend to just kind of fly in maybe for a few days, and then you're flying out again, and it's just been lovely to feel that connection, I would say. So that's me. And thanks again to Catherine and everyone at Athenry for letting me do all this amazing stuff with them.
Thank you so much, Sinead. Many of you might know iayo has been experimenting with online delivery for quite a number of years now. And I think by the time we're finished with this, when we have normality again, we're probably going to need to actually get together to have a conference to see actually what we learned from online delivery, because there's some really great things going on here that can go to the future. I think lots of them might end up more expensive in terms of our tutors' time. There's lots, but what we're learning is really fantastic. So thank you so much, Sinead. And we could have one more formal-ish presentation, and then we'll take a really short break, and then we'll have the questions and answers time. So Sophie Butler, who here in her role as the manager of ConCorda. We also have Peggy Nolan here, who is the director of ConCorda. I think Peggy was here earlier anyway. So many of you can't see. Oh, I can, yes. So, Sophie, enlighten us, please.
Hello. So yes, I'm with ConCorda. I've been with it it feels like forever, to be honest. It's quite a nice family to be a part of. If any of you don't know kind of what it's about, it's a kind of 8-day long kind of intensive kind of chamber music experience for strings. They'll do maybe 3 kind of chamber groups with different tutors working on different rep. We have chamber orchestra. We do evening activities, all that sort of stuff. It's a residential course that's been taking place in Waterford. Obviously, that didn't happen this summer. So the aim was to try and find a substitute, just a way of keeping the kids engaged. And especially, I think kids in particular had a tough summer. They lost everything, summer holidays, any courses they were going to do. And that was one of the things that we felt like really overwhelmingly, that the kids were just so appreciative, the students, the young people, they were just so appreciative to have something to do, just to have a way of connecting with people. And it was like, I think Peggy will agree, it worked so much better than we could have ever imagined. We were a bit, apprehensive, didn't quite know what it was going to turn into. but it worked so amazingly, and we actually ran a 3-day Christmas course as well, which is a first for ConCorda. It's normally just a summer course. So running another shorter course at Christmas was a first for us. And again, like, we just had this overwhelming like support, and like, you know, I think a lot of organizations, they have this certain kind of vibe, this certain feeling, like, you know, it's a family type thing. We were worried we wouldn't get that on Zoom, and we actually did. Which was lovely. And we had so many new students, and they felt it as well, which was really, really nice. You know, we obviously had to change our approach. Chamber music in itself, it's not going to work on Zoom. But it actually gave us an amazing opportunity to do some of the things that we never have a chance to. You know, we have students coming in from all over the country, from different music schools. Some have private teachers. Some have been playing 10 years, some haven't been playing long. You know, there's certain times where, you know, you might look and you'd be like, oh, I'd love to do a workshop on bow hold or bow strokes and stuff like that. But we're, you know, trying to get to concert, we're trying to do this, we're trying to do that. We have all these end goals. But the Zoom course actually gave us an amazing opportunity to go, wouldn't it be great if we did a workshop on, you know, bowing? Wouldn't it be great if we did a workshop on sight reading music? Wouldn't it be great if we did a workshop on analyzing scores? So it actually gave us an amazing opportunity to do all these things. So we ran, I think, including the 2 courses, we ran 48 workshops for violin, viola, cello. We had a bass at Christmas, which was exciting. We also had daily performance classes where they were in small groups and would play for each other. We had a tutor leading the session, but it was very much kind of peer-led, giving each other feedback. And I think the students found it helpful. It was kind of, you know, playing from their own homes, but it was a like small and supportive environment. We had about 50 of those. We ran about 50 of those in total. We also did daily lunchtime concerts as well. We had 8 of them over the 2 courses as well. Sometimes we had, I think in the Christmas course, we more had live performances, so people playing from Zoom. During the previous course, some people they were struggling with internet. So if a person was struggling with internet and really wanted to play, we gave them the option that they could upload video to YouTube, and we would screen share that. So for some people that were struggling with internet, it meant they could still share music, which was really nice as well. We also had social events. So our kind of resident night staff, they became our social staff, and we had a table quiz. We had a virtual treasure hunt, which they all did in their own homes. We had a create your own lockdown buddy, that sort of thing. And you know, we did lots of breakout rooms. We did icebreakers, which actually still worked virtually, which was quite I'm amazed at how like all the things that they came up with. It was fantastic. Like it was, and I think that was the real moment when the students could get to know each other. Because ConCorda, we've got kids coming from everywhere. They don't always know each other, you know. So I think the socials, they really gave the students a chance to actually make friends and to create relationships that actually lasted past the summer course and, you know, back into the Christmas course. We used to run practice clubs in the morning, and it was just as simple as they would log on, everyone would be on mute, and you would just practice. So they could see each other practicing, and they had this kind of, you know, visual connection, but they were just doing it themselves at home, and that worked really well. And actually, our ConCorda students actually created their own after the course ended, which was it was such a lovely thing to see. So that was a really, really nice thing that kind of came out of the course, and it continued for a lot of those students, which was really, really lovely for us to hear. I think one of the things that about Zoom, you know, we've all been on it, we're probably all sick of it. It's hard, like in terms of my role in ConCorda, very often I would, you know, have my camera off, be, you know, sorting the breakout rooms, that sort of thing. Peggy is normally the one that does all the talking. So I think she's enjoying this opportunity to stay on mute. But it can get very stodgy, you know, all these silences, because again, you all know when you ask a question, there just tends to be a wall of silence. And one of the things that we did that I absolutely loved was we had a thought of the day, or an action of the day, or a reflection of the day. And it was just kind of a 5-minute distraction while I was sorting out breakout rooms. And I think the very first one of the tutors, had their thought of the day, and it could be something as simple as, I was thinking it would be very beneficial before I play my instrument just to take a couple deep breaths to settle myself. One person heard, then we passed it on to other students, or any people could volunteer thoughts of the day, actions of the day. We did some stretching as well, which was really helpful. We all had our camera on, and we had one of our students whose mum, I'm not sure what she does, but she has expertise in kind of stretching and kind of working with musicians and that sort of thing. So we actually had that student lead us in some stretches as well. And it's just like that sort of thing, I just think is fantastic for kind of getting rid of that kind of sitting and stopping that happens when we have to allocate breakout rooms, because it just takes time. It just does, there's no way around it. Whereas these sorts of things are a nice distraction. It also meant for us that Peggy could, pass the mantle over to somebody else. So she got a break from talking as well. Means some of our students can get involved as well in the big group. Which is really nice. I think that's probably been one of my favorite things, my favorite kind of Zoom tricks that I've used in my own kind of other Zoom things. I absolutely love it. I would really recommend it. It's just really nice for kind of filling gaps. The other thing that we did in our second course, in our Christmas course, was we had this aim to do a video project over the 3 days. So we were lucky enough that before the heavy Christmas lockdown came in, Catherine Hunker was able to get a small group together of 5 people. We were able to make a live backing track. We did the Bieber Battaglia. Really short piece, really fun. So we were lucky enough to have a live kind of backing track for the students to work with. So this kind of arched our kind of 3-day course where we had sectionals, we had teachers doing kind of workshops on bowings and Baroque kind of styles and stuff like that. And then on the final day in session 1, and I've done a few of these kind of video projects, and actually the way that we did it in ConCorda has possibly been my favorite way, because one of our sessions, we dedicated it just to the video. So we all met on the big Zoom session. I talked very briefly about, okay, make sure you don't have a big light behind you, make sure this and that. And Alan has shared our video, thank you. Yes, so I talked to everybody. I was like, yeah, so keep your stand this way, blah, blah, blah. We talked through some logistics. And the aim was within this kind of hour-long session, they would log off Zoom and use this time to do their video. So it had a few benefits. It meant that obviously all the videos were done at the same time, which means bar, 1 or 2, I actually got all the videos that day. I had to do a little bit of chasing up, but the fact that they had all done it at the same time meant that, they could just send it to me, which was actually really, really great. The other thing as well, and it's often, so like it's really hard making videos. You tend to be very critical of yourself and every single note you play. And that was exactly what we didn't want. We wanted this, really energetic live performance feel. And I think Catherine Hunke had been like, the more mistakes, the better, So by having this kind of, we're doing it during this session, take 2 takes, it is what it is, just enjoy it. And I actually really think you could feel that. Like, I think you could see the kids enjoying themselves. Sometimes they hit 2 strings, sometimes 3. Sometimes they dropped their bow. We got a lovely outtake of a bow going flying. It didn't make the video, but we did get the outtake, so that was nice. But so the fact that we had this kind of 1 slot meant they couldn't linger on it too much, and they weren't dwelling on it. And I kept the Zoom link open for the hour. So if anyone had a problem, one person came up and they were like, yeah, I can't find this note on my instrument. Or one person was like, yeah, can I do my video this way or that way? I stayed on the Zoom call. So if anyone had any questions or problems, they could just hop back on. And we had a couple questions, but we actually managed to get the whole thing done from their end, kind of basically within that hour. And I feel like that worked really well. And it was, I think it also meant giving them a sense of, even though they're doing it on their own, everyone's actually doing it together as well, which was really nice. And I feel like we got a lovely end result. And I think it was a really nice thing for the students to come away with as well, because that sort of thing was a first for ConCorda. A lot of orchestras have been doing these kind of video projects and they're fantastic. It wasn't something we had done before. So I think it was a really nice end for us as well. And especially, we're still in quite a heavy lockdown. We're still in that Christmas lockdown, really. So it was a nice thing for the students to kind of have heading into the January that we've had. And I think kind of going forward, thinking about our summer course, we've given out our dates for the summer course. We've got the 25th of July to the 2nd of August. And, ideally, we'd have it the way it was, where we're our residential course again and our sectionals. It may or may not be possible. We'll have to see. But I think both myself and Peggy and all the teachers at ConCorda, I think it's not just we'll do it because we have to. It won't be the same. It's not the same, but I still think we got so much out of it. I think the students did as well. And I think yes, it is different, but it wasn't actually all that much of a lower experience. It was just something new. And I think the idea of doing workshops and kind of clinics and stuff like that, I think is something that we'll probably kind of merge into our kind of older in-person course. Because it's just so nice to kind of take the time to just fix all these little things, tweak these things, stuff that you wish you had time for. I think going forward for ConCorda, I think it's worth making the time for these things. And I think that's probably one of the things we can come away with, I think.
Sophie, can I just actually jump in?
Of course, yeah.
Just as you're on that point, we have a feedback form that they fill in, and actually we found, really surprisingly, actually, that the students, we added in a question just on the off chance, because we felt that the course had gone so well, as Sophie says, would they like to see any of the aspects repeated in ConCorda? And actually, overwhelmingly, they really did. As Sophie said, we had 50 performance classes where they were in a group, performing to each other and crucially giving feedback. We were sort of selling them as, a way to develop your chamber music skills that are not just playing your instrument, but also of collaboration and sort of working within a team and being able to speak to your colleagues with encouragement and sensitivity and, still giving a critique at the same time. And they really overwhelmingly said they would love to keep that, and that it was so great for confidence. And actually the workshops, which Sophie mentioned, I think there were 48 of them, and they really came from we have a really amazing team of staff, and we just kind of said, what do you want to do that you don't get the time to do, as Sophie's mentioned, and some of the stuff was really, really interesting. Some of it was very technical and nitty gritty. You really got a great feeling for our different personalities in the staff. You have the real technicians that are like, oh, I can't listen to any more shifts, I have to do a workshop on shifts, I just have to. And then you had people, I think Andre, who's in the ICO, said he was just dying to do a workshop on Beethoven first violin parts and, connecting them to, Rode caprices. And, some of them were really challenging, actually. And it was really nice that we also had this aspect that was, it was not simplifying anything because of the situation, but actually just changing the subject matter and keeping it really on a really kind of high level, and sometimes actually maybe in a higher level that we sometimes get to on the course when you're worrying about actually getting something together for a concert. There wasn't that pressure to perform, but you could sort of quietly in the stillness of your own home just take in information and save some of it for later as well. Some of it might come back in 6 months or something like that. So I think that was really interesting that they were really overwhelmingly wanted to include that in the course. So we've talked about maybe in our 8-day course, maybe taking a day in the middle to sort of reset and have, workshop day. So yeah, it's definitely, I think it's definitely going to shape what we do in the future as well. So it's been a real opportunity. But anyway, I'm going to go back to Sophie now because it's so nice that she's doing the talking and not me.
No bother, Peggy. Well, I actually, I don't have too much else to say. One person asked the level, the standard of our students. Our age range is 14 to, I think, Peggy, is it 23?
I think technically, but I think our oldest has been around 20. It's been maybe more appealing, I think, to younger students on the Zoom thing. I think the older ones have a bit more Zoom doom than the younger ones.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, so it's about kind of 14 to 20, 23, and kind of grade 5 plus, kind of generally. And yeah, our numbers have been kind of Zoom doom, such a great word. Yeah, our course numbers, I think we had, was it 50 at the summer course?
Yeah, 50, yeah.
We had 50 at the Zoom summer course, and we had a few, it was a slightly smaller course during the Christmas, I think maybe 30, 40-ish, somewhere in there. But yeah, I think we all surprised ourselves in how well it went, I think, more than anything else. We thought it would be kind of a half substitute, but it's still such an amazing opportunity to get so much done. And it really, really worked for us. And I think it was a really nice way. It's given us a load of new things to kind of think about going forward, which was great.
Great. Thank you so very much. I'm just going to share actually one of my images of the year now, if I can, which is this. This was how ConCorda ran during the summer. So on a on a single Zoom account with 50 players and 13 tutors, and part of the reason that I think we decided between us to do that was the idea that everyone arrived into the one space, because we talked about having a different Zoom account for every tutor, and of course in terms of like the costs of doing things versus online versus in real life, we could have done that no problem, but actually the all arriving in the one space and going everywhere was actually great. And I just love this because it, like, stuff was happening here, including knitting. So great. Shall we all take a 5-minute break? So please, and those who want to stay in chat, great, but then we'll get down to the real questions and answers. And I think we won't have enough time, but that's great. So shall we come back, say, actually at 11:25, and then we'll get going again. And as I say, anyone who wants to chat in the meantime, do please. Okay, so we're after 11:25 now, so we're going to come back officially. Just a couple of things where we are at the moment. So there are also other things going on. One thing in particular, we had workshops back in, I think it was October, with Patrick, who was here, around using Jamulus, and we've also we're working with a little collaboration with the Irish Chamber Orchestra and the Cork School of Music on real-time rehearsals, audio only. That's starting next Saturday. I'd imagine first 3 or 4 sessions would probably be less than fantastic, but we are going to stick with that for a while, and we have the while to do it now. We also will be doing an at-home performance together, probably with aiming to be finished for about May. So we're going to put this out through our members within the next few days, and particularly to give all those people who haven't had a chance to take part in something like that an opportunity to do so. And Sophie will be helping us with that as well, I'm delighted to say. And so I think with that, let's open for questions and for comments, and I suppose let's just have a go. So whoever would like to speak, I suppose, just raise your hand, and I will call out names, and we'll see how that works and how it goes. And for anyone who needs to leave at midday, I suppose just wave goodbye, type goodbye in the chat, and off you go. But for anyone who wants, if we have more to talk about and we're here to stay longer, well, I can stay all day. So anyone have a oh, sorry, actually, just to say, in terms of our at-home performance, it's a piece by Vincent Kennedy, and Vincent is here with us today. So hi, Vincent. Okay, great. Who would like to kick off the questions or the comments? Anyone? Cormac?
This is just like a sectional rehearsal when you ask the players if they'd like to play or do something and nobody volunteers.
Thank you.
We've just experienced that firsthand. Just a few comments, Paula. I really enjoyed your presentation and congratulations on an amazing video with the Ulster Youth Orchestra. Joanna, I think the most amazing thing, I have two hats on here today, one with St Agnes Orchestra, both as the conductor of the summer camp that's coming up for a week in the end of June, beginning of July. So I'll be conductor there, but I've also started in the orchestra, the Late Starters Orchestra, as a double bass player. So it's one of my very few lockdown achievements that I've done that. So I'm seeing the orchestra from both ends. I'm number 6 double bass right at the bottom of the section, and then I'll be transported up to the very front of the orchestra. But I'm also a conductor of the Dublin Youth Orchestra Concert Orchestra, and we've been working with sectional rehearsals with the orchestra, which I think have been really successful as well. Joanna, one of the most amazing concerts I did in the whole year, frankly, was Strings Across the Oceans in November. It was a Saturday afternoon and it was scheduled for 3 p.m. And the reason it was scheduled for 3 p.m. is because there were players from New York who are joining and playing live with us in that concert. This is the St Agnes Orchestra. It was 10 a.m. in New York, 9 o'clock in Houston in America. The same time it was 4 o'clock in Berlin to facilitate the Madrid Orchestra and Berlin. There were players from Helsinki. It was 5 p.m. in Helsinki. And most impressively, it was 11 p.m. in Singapore to facilitate some of the players there. So it was an incredible global event, and really put, all focused around Crumlin and having Crumlin the focus. So that was a tremendous achievement. Sophie, I loved your idea of having a time-specific recording time for the players, and maybe including that in a rehearsal schedule. Because as a professional horn player myself with the RT Concert Orchestra, I know I've been sweating bricks over recording at home, and I know how challenging and difficult it can be. So if you can minimize that difficulty and just make it a small time frame, and as you say, do 2 or 3 takes, that's it, and you take the least worst one, maybe the best one or the least worst one, depending how you look at it. And you find a way to work with all of that. But just to say, Alan and the Irish Association of Youth Orchestras, amazing all the work that you're doing and keeping us all together, including events like this. So congratulations. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Cormac. And actually, I'm not going to let you go just yet, because there is a model that I think you maybe got to do once with the concert orchestra in DYO, having some people present with you in rehearsal and others elsewhere following along. So I think you had one shot at that. Would you?
Yeah.
Right.
So, and that's one question I had for Paula, when Paula mentioned blended rehearsals. I have my own idea what a blended rehearsal might be. What did you mean by blended, though?
Well, so talking about a blended course, in that I was thinking that we might do a few days online and then try and maybe have satellite stations where we meet up. It's all, haven't really given it too much thought, but I don't want to do another completely online course if I can help it. So if I can get people together, even in small groups, to work on things that have been pre-rehearsed a bit online, then that's kind of how we might go.
Brilliant. Okay, and that's my idea of blended as well, is that you would have a live component, and then for all, if you were restricted in numbers in a room, you'd have 5 or even 10 or 12 people in a room playing, but you would be streaming that rehearsal to everybody else who couldn't get into the room for whatever reason, whether it was restrictions, travel, or the numbers in the building, or they just didn't feel like turning up and performing live. So that would be my idea of a blended rehearsal. And I think that that's the next step for all of us. We've been successful going on Zoom, doing sectional rehearsals, but it's really, we're kind of limited with that as well. And I think we've all reached the ceiling of what we can achieve there. As I say, the next step for me would be to have a live group. And if you're working, this is my vision for the summer camp with St Agnes, because it's a string orchestra, it's possibly a little bit easier rather than including wind, brass and percussion. But all we need, frankly, is 5 people. So 1 first violin, 1 second violin, 1 viola, 1 cello, and 1 double bass, conductor, and a tech person who doesn't even have to be in the room. They can be in another room in the building. So minimum 6 people, and we have a live rehearsal. And that is streamed to all the other players in their homes. The advantage of that is you can really work. You can take the second violins and the violas on their own. Okay, this is just second. Let's hear that line, or let's hear the cello line with the first violin and see how that works. So that's the advantage of that, as opposed to recordings, pre-recordings that we already have. We can't pull those recordings apart now. So that, for me, would be the next step. And I've trialed this with my horn students in the Academy of Music. I had 1 student in Amsterdam, 1 student in Dunleary, and I was in a room with 3 students. This is way back in September, I think. And we had a live rehearsal in the room in the Academy, Reich, a horn trio, and we had the 2 players playing along. They were on mute, but they were playing along their parts, and they reported back that the system worked.
Excellent, thank you. See, Catherine McMonish there is waving her hand desperately to get in. Catherine.
2 hands is desperate, 1 hand is hello. Sinead and I had worked with the Sinfonietta, as you saw, in December. Wendy and I had also done the risk assessment for youth orchestras over, I think, maybe 30 hours. What I didn't understand while we were doing that was one very positive thing, the actual feeling of hearing harmony, and it's the holistic effect on your body, and that we just lapped it up like water, as a man in a desert, you know. But the other thing I didn't understand was the stress levels of the 2 weeks afterwards. That because of a huge sense of responsibility to these children, and also the fact that they can't actually physically distance. They don't. You can pop their bottoms on that chair and tell them to stay there, but in any break situation, they will get closer to each other. So the 2 weeks after that particular recording, I developed insomnia because of a sense of responsibility to those kids. So be aware. All I'm saying to you guys is be aware that this has a knock-on effect potentially on your own mental health, and that we would take an attitude, I suppose Wendy and I were very similar in this, that it's not what we can do but what we should do. Okay, sorry to put a dampener on it, lads, but
no, we need to be responsible, so yep.
But it was marvelous.
Good. So Patrick, Patrick early gave workshops with us back in, Cormac said back in September. That is about 10 years ago, you know. So Patrick gave workshops and has been practicing with some young players, but also some personal practices using Janulus with other players. It's your personal practice and playing, Patrick. I'm kind of really interested to hear how's that getting along, because you seem to think it's going very well.
Yes, well, I think it's an underexplored bit of technology still. Has anybody here in the gathering tried this Janulus platform? You have. Yeah, it's okay. Last Tuesday it was 3:30 we had rehearsal, myself and Anna Houston over in Sligo, and 2 of her colleagues. And we played straight through the Joanna Klein and Ock music, start to finish, all 4 movements. no kind of interruptions, no kind of start stops. It was like they were in the same room. And, you know, that's a big deal in terms of the limitations that we have at the moment with rehearsals. So I really think this is a very unexplored potential that people could look into. Now, the downside of this, and by the way, it doesn't require huge broadband. I think we're talking about 3,000 kilobytes is all you need to have flowing data backwards and forwards to the server. So this isn't about broadband, it's about the quality of the broadband. And I suppose if I was to put it into a sentence, if you have a broadband facility that isn't Wi-Fi orientated, in other words, if you don't have a dish on the wall, if you have a cable coming into the house and you have that cable going to a router in your house and you're able to plug directly into that router, then you're in the game as far as getting this Jamulus thing to work for you. And if you're, let's say, inside 300 kilometers of the person you're playing with, then you can get your latency down to about 40 milliseconds, which is 40 over 1,000 of 1 second. Okay? Now, this is something to kind of tune into because this works. The system actually works. Now, the reason people think, oh, online rehearsals, it's a load of rubbish, it's never going to fly. The reason that happens is because there's about, I think I've narrowed it down to about 9 different components that you have to examine. And you have to make sure that these 9 different components are actually sorted. If one of those components is overlooked, the thing is not going to work. But if you fix those, think about it this way, it's joined in a kind of a series configuration of criteria. And if you can join this series up properly, the thing works. Like for instance...
sorry, Patrick, there. I just got to cut across you because I don't really want to get into the technical aspects of it, now. I mean, we have our workshops from October, November, whenever they were, are still online, and Patrick has given us instructions. It's just to say that, I mean, if you feel that you can play with people in Sligo, so Patrick is in Mayo, and you can play and it's like in the room, that's fantastic. I think there's a hard barrier there, which is the speed of light, which is very strange. As the director of the Association of Youth Orchestras, a number of months ago, I was sitting down working out how long it takes light to get from one city to another. Just to see how far it is possible to play away. So it's also, I mean, but as Patrick says, then it's also the connections and the bits and pieces and your headphones and stuff like that. But essentially, you feel, Patrick, it's possible to have.
I think it's coming next when people tune into it. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Thank you very much.
I'd suggest people to look into the literature that's online about it at the moment. We might be able to circulate the latest article as well.
Very good. You sent us something recently. Yeah, we certainly will do that. Great. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any other questions, or particularly just any new aspects to add? So Elizabeth, there, you're waving. Hello there.
Hello. I do have a question. I'm just curious for a few reasons, but I noticed I'm involved with something else altogether, meetings that have gone online. And I noticed that there are people who are joining in and participating who wouldn't have taken the big first step of coming in person, but they're getting engaged. Because I started teaching in schools, I was in 3 schools last year, I reduced my studio. So I don't really have like a critical mass of my own students to start something, but I have made efforts to get them involved in other orchestras, but they don't know any of the kids. It's socially awkward, etc. And they're, you know, these kids, a lot of them are around 12, 13, 14. So I know I'm happy to contact individual orchestras. I'm not asking about that, but I'm just asking in general, has anyone taken the opportunity or found it to be an opportunity to recruit new students? Like teaching online for me the lessons is pretty easy because I have long established relationships with these kids. So starting a new student would be difficult in a private lesson. It's possible, but it would be difficult. But in an ensemble, I was thinking it might be an easier on-road for the kids. And I was just wondering, does anyone have experience of either starting something online that hadn't really been there before, or incorporating new people?
I've some experience in that. Hi, Elizabeth. How are you?
Hi.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Nice to talk. I agree with you that there is a great advantage for new students being online, and particularly shyer students.
Yeah.
And engage because they're muted, and there isn't the pressure of sitting beside somebody who's grade 7 and they potentially are a teenage grade 3.
Right.
What we've done is a lot of conversation. So a lot of the start of our orchestra sessions, everybody has their speaker on. It's the same chaos. I talk to them about, this is not school, this is music. We talk over the top of each other. We play over the top of each other. You interrupt each other. It's my job to, facilitate, but it's not that relationship. And that we get them to, they sort of dob each other in a bit. So they pass the ball if they're, tell me something that happened nice this week. And I mean a small thing. So the children would say, the sun came out and warmed my face. My pillow was exactly the right temperature when I went to bed. I took a bite of a Mars bar and it just melted. That's sort of what we're all trying to do, sort of mental health wise, is just pull up and find ways for these kids to connect. What we do is a complementary system. So they all have to play a bar. I pick the bar so that I'm going to be very careful about who I ask to play what bar or what series of bars.
Right.
And the child who's gone before them has to come up with a superlative that complements that child. It's amazing, it's marvelous, it's splendid, it's
right.
And their vocabulary is building because they're not allowed to repeat a word.
Okay.
So, and they have to use the child's name.
Okay.
Well done, Elizabeth. That was splendid. Okay, now the child that's just played picks the next child. We sometimes do it that a very shy child gets to be master of ceremonies, in which he gets to pick anybody that plays next. And you can see the kid going, and I give them an option of 4 sets of bars, and I name them appropriately. So do you want to give them the easy bar? Do you want to give them the slightly, do you want to give them the rotten bar? And the shyer kid will always pick, that we had one that 12 kids are in the sectional, and the shyest kid got everybody to play the rotten bit. It was just lovely because you watch that child become part of something else. The other one that we've done that works just so well is, again, everybody's speakers on. It's a little bit chaotic, and I'm trying to deal with syncopated rhythms. So they all speak together. 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's not using Patrick. Like I'm so admirable to Patrick to get people, but there's chaos. And then we do 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then do 1, 2, 3 and 4 and I expect them to move, and they can all see themselves doing this movement. They giggle, and you can do it for a lovely 10 minutes. Like we just have fun. That one's really effective when you're just counting. Put your instruments down. Now talk. Everybody talk. Elizabeth, like you're looking. Eric, I said, asked you to put your speaker on. Put it on. You do a little bit of online bullying to go, no, I mean everybody. Come on. But we did that exercise the last couple of weeks with my youth orchestra. They're about the same age group as you're dealing with. And the feedback in their individual lessons was, oh, that was fun. The last one we did was a Christmas concert that was like an old-fashioned house party. Each of the children played separately. They played a Christmas carol, they played whatever they wanted to. If they were steady, I got them to be the teacher, everybody muted, and the child led, Silent Night or whatever. The children's feedback was that they felt more secure online than they would have in a room.
Right.
Happier to do it.
Yeah, I'm helping to take advantage of that. Yeah. But do you have I love those ideas. Have you had students unknown to you join your group since lockdown? Okay. That's fantastic. And that's how you're kind of helping them feel part of the group and join
I live in a small town. I'm in the town, and you know, I meet people standing in the 2-meter queue in the butcher, and you go, "How's your kid doing?" Well, there's no orchestra going on. I was going, there's orchestra going on. I'm a network marketer.
Fantastic.
Right, and I've new violin students that have started with me since January, and that's a whole different ballgame. But
yeah,
a month of parent education before those children started with me.
Okay.
Managing expectations being an entire hour.
Yeah.
It is going to go slowly.
Yeah. That's great. All great stuff. Thanks so much for that.
Very welcome.
Great, thanks both. So does anyone else have any questions, or even as well, so our panelists, you may have questions for each other. I usually find that's a thing that's a can of worms to open, usually a very good one. Oh, yes, Sinead.
I just have a question for Paula, actually. I'm amazed at the level of ensemble you got in the youth orchestra. That was exceptional. I mean, it was unbelievable. How did you do it?
Well, Tom Wall, our producer, did it. I mean, I would imagine that the individual recordings that he got in, I know he spent, I think he gave us 3 or 4 months of his life tweaking those, you know, that it wasn't the rough ones that come in and were just put together. And, you know, there was a lot of work that went into that to make it so polished. And I think that's, you know, it's managing expectations that you really, if you want to get it to sound as polished and together as that, then you need to spend the time and pay the expert to do that. Because I know a lot of people, you know, would try and do their own mixing. I wouldn't entertain that at all, because yeah, it was something that, I mean, that video has really opened the doors for us. You know, it was definitely worth doing because we've attracted funding from it. We've attracted a lot of new members from it. And, you know, it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving. And especially the fact that the BBC took it up, you know, and I think that's another thing. Just email everyone, just send it to every Tom, Dick and Harry that you can think of, and somebody will pick it up. And, you know, I think that's helped when Elizabeth was saying about new numbers. You know, we've had new people that have come in on the back of it because they've maybe seen the video, and, you know, it's social media, get on everything and just spread the word. And sorry that I'm rambling from the first question that you asked, but yeah, it's definitely, you know, it's definitely good to have one good production that you can spread everywhere and tell everyone else what you're doing.
Thank you. And it's just, they must be so proud of it. I mean, and it's something for them to look for, you know, to look back on in years to come and say, I did that. And even if it was slightly tweaked, it's fantastic. So congratulations.
Yeah, well, they won't know. That's the thing.
That's it.
We didn't tell any of the people that we had to turn right down. You know, we didn't tell them.
Yeah. Creative producing is a wonder.
Exactly. Yeah. We have another one coming out in St Patrick's Day as well. We're doing an arrangement of Brian Boru March, but Steve Barnett from the Ulster Orchestra did an arrangement for them years ago. So that's coming out in St Patrick's Day. So I'll share that.
Very good. Anyone else for stuff? Have we? Oh, Cormac again. Yes.
Yeah, my take on sectional rehearsals and where we are now, I think the most important thing is if we can get the players to be involved in the rehearsal. So with the Dublin Youth Orchestra, I've been taking the brass section, and from the very beginning, I've been asking the players. Now, I'm lucky that there's a small group, there's 8 or 9 players, so I'm able to say, like, Bertie, if I could use you for an example, I've said, Bertie, can you just give us a couple of bars there, and let's see where we are, and they give us a couple of bars, and I'll move on to Joanna then, and she'll play another 2 bars. And I think that makes it a lot more interesting for the players when they really feel like they're contributing. They're actually part, rather than it would just be me talking for 40 minutes or 50 minutes or whatever it is. and I can see that they're all falling asleep. So if you make it much more applicable to, if they really feel involved and engaged, and I know that that's really difficult to do, and I've seen it happen in other sections when people are too afraid to contribute. But I started off after Christmas. I started with each section in the DYO, and I asked them 2 questions, just immediately after Christmas as they came into the Zoom room. What did you have for your Christmas dinner? And did you watch any movies? What was your favorite movie? And so I asked them all questions that I knew hopefully that they would know the answer to, that it wasn't going to be too complex. But it just gave them the encouragement to come off Zoom and have their voice heard in front of all of their colleagues. And just to break that ice however you can. And then maybe you might get one person who will volunteer to play if the tutor asks them. And then maybe next week you might get 2 people. And hopefully that will open the gates. But I think it can be very draining for the players if it just becomes a little bit like a lecture and they don't feel like they're part of the rehearsal. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. No. Yep. Off you go.
Sorry, can I just add into that the use of breakout rooms is really useful for just bringing them down in smaller numbers, to when you've maybe got 6 in a room and then they actually get half an hour just to talk to each other. And that's really important, especially because we had 70 people and it's impossible when you've got them all on screen for them to have any sense of connection to each other. So we used the breakout rooms a lot. And another thing that is kind of not really connected to that, but we did a whole session on yoga where we had David Aspin, who was our viola tutor, just do an hour's yoga, and he was great. He was funny with it. So that was something that the students liked as well. It was a bit different and very useful techniques for them to take on as well. Sorry.
Great, thank you. Just wondering, Claire, would you like to say something? Don't want to have to put you on the spot if you don't want to, but seeing as you've been here
and the only thing, I mean, for me, because I'm not actually running an orchestra myself, it's just amazing to listen to what people have been doing and the creativity. And I just think that, I suppose, as musicians, we're all creative, and so people have really pushed out the barriers that we're living with at the moment to find amazing solutions. So it's just really positive.
Great. Okay, thanks so much. So I think we kind of just wrap up the formal session. As I say, anyone who wants to hang on for a while and have a chat can. So thank you very much to Paula with the Ulster Youth Orchestra, Joanna and Nicole with St Agnes's CMA and the Skull Una Nefa Orchestra, Sinead with Athenry Sinfonietta, and Sophie with ConCorda, and Peggy also, and to everyone else who contributed. Yeah, I think there's loads and loads of stuff to this, so I'm going to extract the sound file and just run it, and we'll probably then try and put together, as many of the different ideas as we can, because there's loads and loads of stuff, and there's loads of ways in which all this can be kind of expanded and developed. And really imagine, we will at some stage look back and say, actually, that was really good. Let's keep that, and let's do this on Zoom, and let's keep, Jamulus going. And so we'll get an awful lot out of this. But for the moment, it's just the efforts and the creativity and keeping people connected has been really fantastic. So I kind of applaud everyone involved and say thank you very much. And I think we shall formally end there, but if you want to finish out the session, we won't actually stream it. I popped in the ConCorda Bieber video there again. If you want to hop off to YouTube and have a listen to that, it's a particularly lovely one as well. So thank you all.
Thanks. Well done.